So in this lesson, like I said, we're going to talk about if-else statements, which adds that else clause. I need to go back a little. There we go. So if you remember last class, and even just looking at how we implemented the solution to the last problem, we were using if statements to check every single condition, right? Back in the cooking one, we checked to see if our seconds are less than or equal to 20. And then we also checked explicitly if the seconds was greater than 20. But if this is false, if this statement is false, seconds is less than 20, we know that this condition is going to be true. And so that's where the else clause comes in. It's kind of like a catch-all. So let's go back here. Okay, so in this example, this is also the example we did last time with the voting age, right? So it checks to see if the age is greater than or equal to 18. If it is, it does this. But then originally we had another if clause to check to see if the age is less than 18. And the point here is that this is really inefficient because the computer is going to check both of these lines, both of these conditionals, even if it found that this was true. And we know logically that if this was true, this is going to be false. So why would you even spend the computational energy and time to look at this line of code? And so that's where the else clause comes in. So instead of writing another if statement, if we look over here on the right here, we can include an else statement which will evaluate this code in brackets if this initial condition up here evaluates to false. So if age is not greater than or equal to 18, it's going to skip this line right here and jump down to the else clause. On the other hand, if this was true, it will go ahead and evaluate this line right here, print out you can vote, and it will skip this else clause. It will completely ignore it because, well, this one was already true. Okay, so let's take a look at an example. So yeah, I want to do this one. So suppose we created a bill class, not like Mr. Bill, but like a bill that you get at the restaurant. And this bill class is to help restaurants write checks. And so basically, we are in a bill class, we're going to have these two private instance variables, the cost of the meal, so the total bill, and the number of customers that were served for that particular bill. Okay, and here's the constructor. Now, what if we wanted to write a method called add tip for the bill class that adds 25% of the bill to the total bill? So that's like basically the tip amount. But it only does that if the number of customers is it should actually say 8 or higher. So if there's 8 customers or more, you're going to want to add 25% to the total bill. And if the customer amount is less than 8, instead we want to add on 20% to the bill. Okay, so if it's a small group, we're going to add 20% to the bill for the tip. If it's a large group, we're going to add 25% to the bill. Another thing is that the add tip method, we don't want it to return a value. We just want to modify the cost of meal value here. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's work on that. Okay, so the first step is that we want to write our method signature. Okay, so our method signature for the add tip, we're always going to have the visibility be public. So we're going to go ahead and start off with public. And then we want to talk about what value this returns. And in this case, it says it should not return a value. So what return type is that? What keyword do I put after public? Void, thank you. And then I want to put the name of the method, which we are given as add tip. And I'm going to leave the parameter list empty, so that's empty parentheses. And I'm going to go ahead and take this curly so that it's around these comments that I have here, because that's my different steps. Okay, so now here's the part where we want to use our new concept of an if-else statement. So next we want to check to see if total customers is more than 8. So total customers is up here as a private instance variable. So this is going to be an if statement. And if there are more than 8 customers, we want to add 25% to the total bill. So this is going to be an if statement. So we'll start off with, actually, let me put this up here. We'll start off with just the if statement. So how do I check to see if total customers is more than 8? Actually, I want to do is 8 or more. 8 or more. So how to check to see if my total customers is 8 or more? Yeah, greater than or equal to 8. So we're going to say total customers is greater than or equal to 8. 8. 8. There we go. What are we going to do? If that is true, we want to go ahead and add 25% to our total bill. And so our total bill is represented here as cost of mil. So we're going to basically calculate this, recalculate the cost of mil to be the original cost of mil plus 25% of that cost. So one way of writing that is cost of mil is going to get whatever the cost of mil is plus 25%, so 0.25 of the original cost of mil. So this is going to go ahead and add 25% of the cost of mil to the original cost. And so that will calculate the tip for a large group of 8 or more. Okay, so that's this if clause right here. There we go. So that's going to close that if clause there. Now, our last step is to otherwise, like if this is not true, we're going to add 20% to the total bill. So instead of writing another if statement, what are we going to use? Instead of if, we're going to use else. Yes. So we're going to go ahead and say else. And then we're basically going to do this, but instead of 0.25, we're going to have 0.2. Oops. Otherwise, we're going to add 20%. So this is going to add 20% of the cost of mil to the original cost. So now we can go ahead and test this out. I've written up a toString method that will print out the total bill amount for the number of customers. In my main class, I have some tests that I can print out. You can actually see them right here. So let's go ahead and I'll rerun it. So this first one that I've created, this first bill that I've created is a large group. So you can see that the group has 100 customers. So that is considered a large group because it's more than 8. And the base cost of their bill was $500. Okay. And so we can see that before we added the tip, it put that $500 amount. And then once we added the tip here on line 7, we could then print out the bill again, and we can see that it has increased by 25%. So it added $125 to their bill. Okay, and then to check the other condition, I created a small group. So this group only has 2 people, and they ate a bunch of sushi, and it cost $50. So they ate like $25 worth of sushi each person. And so I went ahead and I printed out the bill for before we added the tip, and we see that original value of $50. And then after I added the tip here on line 18, you can see that the bill has increased now by $10, which is 20% of that $50 bill. And so we've successfully now built a program that will calculate the added tip based on the number of customers. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to include this program as part of your notes that you can look back on. Let's do a simple example that we saw on the slide to close this thing out. So last time we built this really simple program that will check to see if you're old enough to vote. Okay, so to kind of demonstrate what we were doing, we could enter an age, and if you were old enough to vote, it said you can vote. If you were not old enough to vote, it said, sorry, you can't vote yet. But originally, what were we doing? We were being really inefficient. We were using two if statements. So what line should I modify to make this more efficient? What line in this program should I modify? And you could just say the number of the line that I should change. Yeah, the second if, right? So line 27 here. So I'm going to change this. I'm just going to delete that here, and I'll just put an else. And now, anytime that this statement is false, it's going to jump down to the else clause. Anytime that this statement is true, it's going to ignore the else clause. So this is much more efficient. Instead of checking two different conditions every single time, we're only checking one, right? Because the other one's going to get skipped. All right, so let's run that, and the behavior should be the exact same. So 20 should result in you can vote. Yep. And then if I put in a lower number, like 10, it's going to jump down to that else clause and print out, sorry, you can't vote yet. So that also reduces the workload that you as a programmer have to do, because instead of writing two different Boolean expressions, you can write one and then a catch-all as an else. All right, any questions for me? That's about it for 3.3. Like I said, it just adds that one layer of information so that instead of just using if clauses, you can also include an else as a catch-all. So I'll go ahead and stop this